Now, the United Kingdom's Global Entrepreneur Program is a network of deal makers and mentors who have significant experience in launching and scaling businesses across most sectors and industries. The program is designed to help the best sustainable early stage companies and entrepreneurs in the world set up their global businesses in the UK. Now, to discuss how African entrepreneurs can take advantage of this initiative, my guests are Stephen Mooney, Director at iVeridis, and Anthony Sheehan, Founder and CEO Near You and Now, and Joel Singh, Managing Director at IEA. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. All right, we're going to have to start off this way. Now, talking about the United Kingdom's Global Entrepreneur Program. Let me start off with you, Stephen. Just talk us through this. What is it all about?
Yeah, the Global Entrepreneur Program is a program designed for entrepreneurs, managed by entrepreneurs. So it's really about identifying those high growth, high potential companies that may want to look to the UK to expand their business into other markets. So we work with a select number of companies that we meet through our networks and through working with the local trade teams to help them have a soft landing spot and give them a greater chance to success should they choose to make the UK their base or home.
Interesting. Now, Anthony, what do you make of this initiative, and how effective, do you think it's going to be?
So the program has been running for about 4 years, and we've taken close to 400 companies from around the world, from regions like the Americas, from India, from Australia, from all over Europe, into the UK, and we've seen several of them go on to quite significant success with a little bit of assistance from our program. So we're mentoring, we're giving advice, we're making introductions, helping them raise investment, helping them find funding, and also just adjust culturally to the shift into the UK, which can be really challenging when you're trying to bring a business in from overseas. So we're really optimistic that as Africa opens up and we see the emergence of some really strong technology clusters across the continent, that the brightest and the best of those entrepreneurs, as they look to build global businesses and scale their initial enterprises into something much larger, that the UK is a great place for them to come and that we can help them accelerate their success when they arrive here.
Now, Joel, can you help us break this down a little bit more? Just talk us through this model and how it works.
Well, me being a local South African, I think the first issue is an expansion to a place where we don't have any exposure on, we don't have any influence at, we don't have a network where you have relationships, long-term relationships. So as an entrepreneur, if you're expanding and you want to get access to a larger market as compared to South Africa, you will be needing all the help that you can get. When it comes to DIT, they assist in not just the starting up of the companies, right, and the introduction, but through the years to come, you have access to their support network as well, over and above the export incentives that you get from UK itself. So you can't look at it in a short term, like 6 to 12 months or so. You've got to have at least a 5-year plan. That's very, very key. I think to start off in the program, there are some requirements for you to get onto the program, and it's specifically sort of geared towards the firms that have been established in South Africa or in Africa as a whole. So you do need to have some form of history, more at the relationship level and at the networking level local within your country. So yeah, I think in terms of the timing, the lift and drop that we've done from here pretty much, or the expansion, for us has taken about 9 months. The first 6 months I'd say would be the hardest, because that's when you need to set the model of the company and how you actually want to set it up and your 5-year plan. Once that's done, the last 3 to 4 months are exceptionally easy with the help of the UK firms in UK itself. The UK firms that you will meet there will be set up from the DIT system as well. So the entrepreneurship firms that you'll be dealing with in UK would obviously have long-term relationships which you need to tap into, which makes the entire move exceptionally easy.
Now, Stephen, what makes the UK an ideal place for any business, to expand to?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is access to markets. So myself personally, I'm not British, I'm Canadian, moved to the UK off the back of a business that I started in North America in 2007, and recognized that the UK was not only a great market in itself, but also opened the door for example, for myself being from Western Canada, a whole new world and a whole new set of markets, right? And I think that's the immediate opportunity as you look to grow to your business and you've established yourself. Gaining access to both the funding networks as well as how many corporate offices and the access to investment. And then from the UK as a jumping off point, you can access the Asian markets, the African markets, as well as the local markets. So I think it becomes a real center point. And then within different sectors, there's real opportunities. Myself, my current business is linked up to one of the leading universities, so it means an access to talent that's almost unprecedented.
Now, interesting, talking about access to markets, how much access can most of these businesses get to the European market, especially with the wake of the Brexit?
What we found, particularly in the technology industry, I think, is people are just heads down, building businesses, finding problems they can solve, building partnerships, raising money, hiring people, and really nothing's changed. And I don't think it will for some time. It's a political story at the moment. No doubt there will be impacts down the road, but I think they'll be some way away. So as a technology sector, it's as busy, it's as active as ever. People are coming from all around the world to start businesses, to work in companies in the UK. Those companies are selling out across Europe and across the rest of the world as well. And I think down the line that some of those changes will actually potentially be a benefit to African partners and African entrepreneurs that want to come into the country. It's likely, I think, that the UK will extend open arms to really strong founders and highly skilled technical people from wherever they are in the world. At the moment, it's been an open bridge from Europe for a generation. I think it becomes more of a level playing field, and people will be able to come to the UK to work, come to the UK to start companies. And that's certainly the intention, I think, of everybody back in the UK at the moment.
Now, talking about benefiting the African markets, can you just talk us through how many African businesses have been expanded globally, especially in the UK?
I don't know that I could comment on the actual numbers, and really the purpose of this trip is for us to get a better sense within the specifics of the Global Entrepreneur Program. So we were at a program yesterday with a company that has just begun that move. As Anthony said, we're working within a smaller crowd, so only 400 in the past 4 years. It is really a more niche and exclusive club. I think for us, it's now trying to understand the opportunity, and I think what I've seen so far, and mindful that we've only been in the country for a couple of days, is the entrepreneurial spirit that exists here is something that's actually blown me away, and the feeling that there's many people out here that are looking to take an initiative and solve local problems as well as international problems, and I think when you look at the way those problems are solved based on the infrastructure, it creates huge opportunities. As an example of that, I would point to the development of technology based in and around the mobile networks. When you look at the region, the lack of infrastructure has led to African companies looking to solve those problems based on the tools they have available.
We're definitely going to come to that, Anthony. I wanted to find out how aware are most African businesses of this opportunity the UK is offering?
So the specific program, I suspect they're entirely unaware, unless they've been to one of the events or spoken to the British trade teams in South Africa and the other countries. We've flown under the radar, really. One of the reasons for being here this week is to announce to people that we're here. We're really keen to talk to entrepreneurs that are looking to the UK. And extend that outreach. We've started to see an uptick in the numbers of people that find their way to us. We've certainly been helping a handful of African businesses over the past year look at the opportunities to expand and bring their businesses into the UK. And we expect to see that number grow quite rapidly now that we're here, building those bridges, building those connections, and announcing to people that if they're looking to bring their business into the UK, come and find us, come and talk to your local British trade team, and they can connect you back to the program and back to our panel of experts.
Now, Joel, what sector do you see expanding the most internationally?
I think in South Africa as a whole, in the last month, there was a launch in UK where they want to change the image of how South Africa is seen, and the intention is to create an image around South Africa that revolves around the fintech industry, and that's the drive so far. There's a lot of startup firms locally within South Africa or Africa as a whole. A lot of them are around the banking sector, but it's specifically software firms surrounding the banking sector. So that's your banking, insurance as well included in that. In terms of software development, I can't comment on that as well.
I can take that on you if you'd like. In terms of sectors, Joel's right, fintech is a real strength of both, particularly London in the UK and particularly Johannesburg here in South Africa. And the opportunity to establish partnerships for companies working in that sector is a very obvious one, and we're already uncovering potential opportunities to do so in the first 2 days we've been here. But we're also seeing a real breadth across the whole software sector, across internet, across mobile, as Stephen mentioned, is interesting. And some of the really sort of sectors like energy and clean tech. African entrepreneurs are developing very pragmatic solutions to African problems that then have a wider application, often in the developed Western world. And so we're really interested to talk to some of those as well and see if we can help them adapt and bring their solutions into the UK.
That's a very interesting key you raised there, because I was going to talk about that earlier and talk about the fact that most businesses are actually set up to meet local demands in their own country. What's the possibility of that business excelling outside the continent or outside their country? I mean, to start off with a country like the UK, will that technology or that innovation be required in that particular country? That's what came to mind to me before you made that question. Now, Stephen, do you think you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think sometimes the most elegant solutions to a problem are the simplest ones. And the mobile example is a great example of that, that in the Western world often we're trying to build smartphone solutions to problems that could be done through SMS or through a simple system. And I think these are the types of companies and business models that could emerge from this region. And I think the second point is, if there's solutions that work here, there's a vast developing world outside of Africa that could also benefit from the solutions, and having a place where you can leverage that and grow makes the UK a natural home for that.
Interesting. Stephen, we're going to talk more on this just after the break. I've been speaking to Stephen Mooney, Director at iVeridis, and Anthony Sheehan, Founder and CEO Near You Now, and also Joel Singh, Managing Director at IEA. Now, as we continue our discussion on how African entrepreneurs can scale up their businesses in the United Kingdom, my guests are Stephen Mooney, Director at iVeridis, and Anthony Sheehan, Founder and CEO Near You Now, and Joel Singh, Managing Director at IEA. Now, Stephen, just before the break, you were making a point about how relevant, of course, local innovation can be on the international scene.
Yeah. So the example I was giving was just one of we were talking about a company this morning that was coming up with a creative business model around solving the problem of ownership of cows and cattle, and the concept of taking a business model of sharing ownership of something like that to solve local problems. Well, that same sort of problem could have the same effect in other markets. So I think once you can develop a solution to a local problem here, I think trying to access those other markets presents a huge opportunity. And that comes back to the point of proving out a concept here with a local problem, taking that to a place like the UK where you might be able to work towards investment and scale the business, and then starting to look to other markets. And I think the flip side of that is taking simple solutions that could be applied to the UK market and growing them and expanding into the Western market.
Interesting. Now, Joel, you have successfully expanded your business to the UK. Talk us through the role and importance of timing when it comes to expanding a business globally.
I think the first thing, because we have expanded in the course of this year, you need to understand the economics of the country that you're moving to. In this case, June 23rd was a very milestone point. So for me, as the owner of the company, I had planned my travels after June 23rd, at least about 2 or 3 weeks after that. So you need to be aware of the economic environment that you're walking into. In terms of your timing, I think there is no better time than now. I mean, if you need to get things done, you just need to get things done. And you've got to get things done fairly fast, because the first 6 to 12 months is your make or break time pretty much. because what's actually happening is you've got no revenue stream in the new country that you're operating in. So especially when it comes to the UK. So you need to have enough funds for you to carry the business for the first 6 to 12 months maximum. Hopefully within 6 months you've got a revenue stream that's going to be coming in. But I think that's very, very key. You need to plan your financials around that. We are lucky in a sense that we've managed to get clients within the first 2 to 3 months, because we've started our marketing strategy and we started marketing at least 3 to 4 months before me going to UK. So you've got to get that timing right, and you've got to watch your cash flows as well. You don't want to rely too much on the financials of the country that you're coming from. So yeah, I think that would be a very key point to note.
Interesting point you've raised there. Anthony, would you say there is a prescribed model for expansion?
There's no single prescribed model, but there are some commonalities I think we see in most of the founders that come that we help with the Global Entrepreneur Program that go on to be successful. One of the critical things for us is the person, the entrepreneur, the founder. We're really looking for founders that have, they're creative, they're persistent, they're resilient. They're going to do everything it takes to get around the problems and challenges that they're going to face. It's hard just building a business in your own domestic market. Taking that global, moving that overseas, is harder again. So we tend to look first and foremost at the individual founder and the entrepreneur and the management team as indicators of, is this a group that's going to be successful internationally? And occasionally there are areas and gaps in their knowledge and experience that we can help fill, and we can coach and guide and mentor them through that process. And then, there's as Joel indicated, there's some logical things you need to get in order, some legal requirements, some financial requirements, a marketing plan. And often also it's a clear focus on what you're trying to achieve early on. So one of the things we'll often coach companies coming in is to really focus in on an initial target sector and an easy win for you. So you may actually have developed your domestic business to be serving a number of different segments or markets. Pick the one that's really the sweet spot for the UK and go after that first, so that you get that initial traction quite quickly, and you can start to build success in that way. So we'll adapt the broad framework for each individual company, but there are certain things you look for and you tend to see time and time again in those that are successful.
Now, Joel, I'm taking a look at a continent like Africa. The most countries that are very interested, or businesses who are actually interested in manufacturing, they're more interested in getting their products outside the continent to the international market in order to attract, of course, customers from that space. Now, when we talk about, of course, expanding your business, especially in the manufacturing sector, through exporting and other means, can you talk us through the most efficient way of exporting and ensuring that businesses in the manufacturing sector can actually thrive outside their current shores?
In terms of manufacturing, I think your cost of labor here is fairly low. Your accounting costs, when it comes to all the infrastructure costs, effectively is far more lower here. But if you look at the sales market here locally within Africa as a whole, the margins are not high, and in terms of the current currencies, it's a bit unstable. So you need to take all those things into consideration. If you base your manufacturing plant out of the UK, you find your labor force is far more highly skilled, right? Far more stable. There is not too much interference from unions, which is, I think, from an African market we suffer with. We've seen that in the last year to 2 years in terms of mining, and also in the manufacturing and retail space. So I think if you take into consideration all those the local hurdles that we have here in Africa as compared to the UK market, it's far more stable in that environment. So you don't have too much of interference. And as an entrepreneur, you want to focus on just the business and not the outside interferences. And that's the benefits you have if you base your manufacturing firm out of UK. And that I've seen over the last 15 to 20 years. And yeah.
Oh, well, Stephen, what's your take on this? Because most times when you interview startups here, on the continent, their main aim is to ensure that they move their products outside the continent. They want that, of course, appreciation from the international scene as well. What's your take?
Yeah, I think when you take it to the entrepreneur level, there's really at the core 2 things that all entrepreneurs want, right? They want access to capital and access to customers. And beyond that, at the core of the entrepreneur, it's about looking at barriers and going around, over, or through them. And I don't think that matters whether it's an African entrepreneur or a Canadian entrepreneur or a British entrepreneur. And I think that comes back to the point, right, that if you have startups and entrepreneurs that have begun to through their own capital or through their own sweat and graft, grow a business and win customers within the African continent, the next thing they look to do is access more finance and more customers. And so coming back to the Global Entrepreneur Program as well as the UK trade team locally, the next step is really just trying to negotiate, remove, blast through the barriers that exist to get you to those two things. So I think if you get back to the root of it, that's really what will help an African business scale. And as they scale, they may scale and set up in markets like the UK, but that growth is always sustained and continues to grow at the local grassroots level.
Just talk us through some of these barriers you think the UK government is doing away with in order to allow these businesses thrive. Yeah,
it's kind of the a part of the impetus around the popular vote to Brexit is the belief that there are barriers that are unnecessary right now. I think already the UK government has done some interesting things in the past 3 or 4 years around encouraging investment in earlier companies. So there's programs called SEIS and EIS investment schemes that are ultimately removing the barriers of risk for high net worths to invest in early stage companies. These programs offer tax incentives as well as growth incentives for both the company and the investor that has led to a dramatic upturn in risk capital being invested in startups. So that's a classic case where the government has listened to the entrepreneurs and started to find means to stimulate without getting in the way.
And of course, Anthony, just on final note, I was just reading up on an article this morning and I saw that in September 2014, the Coalition for Digital Economy launched the UK Startup Manifesto. I want to understand what that is about and how it relates, of course, to the United Kingdom Global Entrepreneur Program.
I think what you'll find in the UK is an appetite for entrepreneurship that we've actually seen mirrored in our short time here in South Africa as well. I think it's a global phenomenon that people are looking to take control of their destiny, of their futures. They see that a lifetime career in a big safe organisation is perhaps either not for them or no longer available anyway, and going out on their own and using their expertise and the things they're passionate and believe in and starting to build small businesses that may grow into large international businesses is becoming much more of an established way for people now, much more accepted way to make a career, even for people coming out of the best business schools and certainly for people coming out of the best technical universities. So there's a spirit in the UK that government is helping to stimulate, but it's really quite organic. It's coming from the general population and the business community, obviously, in particular. And really the Global Entrepreneur Program is the manifestation of that. It's using people who've been in business, people who've been running companies. As a team of 18 people, we've all had success, but we've all had failures too. So the ability to pass on that experience to the next generation of international entrepreneurs arriving in the UK is something we're really pleased to do, and something that seems to benefit that group coming in as well. So we're delighted to play our small part in that general trend towards a much more entrepreneurial society that does seem to be a global trend.
Interesting. I'm not sure I actually have time now. I was just going to squeeze in a question there to Joel, at the very last minute. Just in a nutshell, Joel, we're actually out of time. Just talk us through the importance of partnership. How important is partnership, in the scheme of things?
I think it's very key. Reason being, when it comes to partnering up, especially when it comes to the UK firms, they already have a built-up relationship within the country itself. So you need to tap into that network, right? It not just guarantees your startup as well within the country, but it also maintains your relations throughout over the next 3 to 5 years, and it ensures that you will succeed once you've done the expansion across through to UK. In terms of the partners, you need to be selective of who you choose. You've got to check the history up on them as well. So references are quite key. With us, we're in the SAP space, so most of the work that we do involve C-band level, so we don't seem to have those sort of issues. But I think it's very, very key, because relationships are key, and it's based on trust. And that's something that you don't have time to build up again from scratch once expanding to a newer country.
All right, thank you, Joel. It's really been interesting getting your view on that. I've been speaking with Stephen Mooney, Director at iVeridis, Anthony Sheehan, Founder and CEO near you and now, and Joel Singh, Managing Director at IEA.